Did I ever tell you the story about the time Barry Manilow saved my life? Actually, to be quite accurate, it really wasn't my life, it was my mother's life. Actually, when I think about it, maybe it was both of our lives. And as you hear the rest of the story, maybe you'll discover that Barry Manilow could save all of our lives. Shortly before Passover this past spring, my mother ended up in ICU following complications from knee replacement surgery. After about a week in ICU, she was discharged to a skilled nursing facility to rehab her knee, and while she was there, I sat with my dad and my siblings on rotation in her room, making sure that she got the attention and care that she needed. During that time, my mother, who has always loved Barry Manilow and music of that genre, requested that we play his songs to speed her recovery. We did. She would sing along, forcing me and my siblings and my dad to sing along with her, as well as all of the nurses, all of the care aides, all the physiotherapists and occupational therapists, really anyone that walked into the room. It was Manilow mania in the rehab center. Ready to take a chance again, Mandy, Can't Smile Without You, on and on. I mean, this is an artist who wrote a song about writing a song that make the whole world sing. His music is everywhere. One morning, we got an urgent call from the facility that they were rushing my mother back to the hospital and back to ICU. Something was not right. Her blood pressure and vital signs were critically low. And so back in Emerge and then in ICU, they tried to figure out what was wrong with my mother as she rapidly began to decline. They discovered internal bleeding, but they weren't sure that she would survive the procedure to stop it. We had the conversations with the hospital social workers that I have had sitting with many of you in this room. Conversations about heroic measures, potential outcomes, and making plans for the unthinkable. I prayed. I asked God for help. Now, I'm a pretty faithful person, as you might expect for someone in my line of work. But still, I was like a nervous airline passenger on a plane running through turbulence, making all sorts of vows and promises to God. If my mom could only just survive, God, I'll do this, God, I'll do that. I'll tell you now that I promised a few things that day that I needed to clear up with God this evening. Some stuff that, in the details, we've reached an understanding. As she was fading in and out of consciousness, my mother asked for more Barry Manilow music in her room, as though we weren't all already suffering enough. In the midst of my prayers and nervous pacing, a thought occurred to me. Maybe I could do better than playing It's a Miracle on my iPhone. Maybe I could make a miracle happen. When you're in that moment, and I know many of us have been in that moment, feeling utterly helpless, unable to stop the oncoming train of destruction and heartache that you see barreling at you, headlong right into you. You want to do something, to do anything, to exercise some modicum of control over the senselessness, the chaos that has exploded in your life in the space of a heartbeat, of a breath. Reb Moshe Leib of Sassov taught, if you are looking for a spark, the best place to look is in the ashes. In the ruins of my utter despair and hopelessness, I had the spark of an idea. I began to wonder if I knew anybody who knew Barry Manilow. And if I did, could I ask them to ask him to record a message for my mom, to maybe lift up her spirits, heal her soul as her body continued to fail. So from the ICU, with tubes dripping and monitors buzzing and beeping, I posted a message on Facebook and Twitter. Now, I've been a rabbi for 22 years in 2 different countries, serving rather large congregations and communities. I am fortunate and blessed to have many wonderful friends and a vast social network. My mother has been a Hebrew school teacher and conversion tutor for 60 years or more. For much of my career, at least in the Jewish community, I was more frequently referred to as Patty's son than I was Rabbi Dan. It continues today if I go home, by the way. Her good name and reputation always preceded me. And so in this moment, the internet did what it is really good at, maybe the exact opposite from what I discussed on Rosh Hashanah about how it is dividing us and inciting us against each other. Here, the internet was a tool for connection, for crowdsourcing, for bringing people together for a good cause, for a good and kind purpose. Within a few hours, I discovered that it turns out I know 5 people who either know or know somebody who knows Barry Manilow. So the request was made. Someone from his team actually called me. Amazing. This was the call. How do you know Barry Manilow? Well, I don't really know Barry, but my mom is very sick and she loves his music. Could Barry record a short message to lift up her spirits? They expressed sympathy for my mom and our family, but explained that they get thousands of these requests every year. Rabbi, consider Barry's target demographic. Aging bubbies and zadies of all faiths. I am sorry, but we cannot possibly say yes. I hope your mom feels better. Click. That's pretty much what I expected. When I tried, I got a phone call. Now, 2 Yiddish words need to be spoken at this juncture in the story. Nudnik and chutzpah. You know that scene in the Blues Brothers where Jake and Elwood are in the midst of this car chase, the police are chasing them, and Dan Aykroyd, who was Canadian, Dan Aykroyd's character, Elwood, says to Jake, "They're not going to catch us. We're on a mission from God." Remember that scene? I think there might have been a little bit of that going on amongst my social network. Because after the 4th or 5th time, my chutzpahdik and nudnik friends and acquaintances called or texted Barry Manilow, someone reached out to get my cell phone number. And the next thing I know, my phone rings with a Las Vegas number I don't recognize. So I step out of the ICU. It's Barry's assistant. The call goes something like this. "Is this Rabbi Dan?" "Yes." "Hi, this is Matt. I'm Barry's personal assistant." "How do you know Barry?" "Hi, Matt. Well, I don't actually know Barry, but I think some of my friends and their friends do. You see, my mom is in the hospital. She might die. And the only thing that is keeping her spirits up, maybe even the only thing that's keeping her alive, is Barry's music. And I know it's a big ask. I know that you get these all the time, and if you say yes to me, you might never be able to say no again. But do you think that Barry could record a get well video for my mom? What's your mom's name? Is this your cell phone? We'll see what we can do." And then Matt adds, "Rabbi Dan, my dad has been sick too, and I'm really sorry for what you're going through. Matt, I am so sorry for you. Hold on to every minute you have with him. Say everything you have left unsaid. Hang up on me right now, Matt, and call your dad right now. Tell him you love him. You can never say it too much because at some point, Matt, it will be too late." We hung up. I cried for Matt's dad. I'm pretty sure he cried for my mom. There are no atheists in foxholes or in airplane turbulence, and there are no differences in grief and despair. If you know, you know. So somehow they found Barry Manilow backstage in Las Vegas in his dressing room just before he was about to go on for his show, and he recorded a message for my mom. Within 24 hours of hearing the message, doctors successfully stopped the bleeding. My mom's vital signs were slowly but steadily coming back into normal range, and the doctors told us they expected her to not only live, which was seriously in question, but to make a full recovery. And she did. Now, as I've said, I'm a person of faith, but as you've heard me describe before, it's a fairly rational faith. The miracles that I believe in are human-made, and this was that kind of miracle. A whole bunch of people, many who I didn't know, who were related to this. They related to this story because, well, we've all been there, by a bedside, feeling helpless, wanting to do something. And they all came together to help to do the best and as much as they could. My question is why? Why did they do that? Why did friends of friends who didn't know my mom, who might not have even known me, why did they stop and try to help? Why did Barry Manilow, in the midst of all that he was doing, stop whatever it was before going on stage for thousands of people and record a message for my mom? And you could say it was because Barry and Matt and all the people that reached out and tried to help that they are Menschen, the plural of Mensch. And you'd be right, they each are a Mensch. But what really is a Mensch? Now there's a Jewish value at work here. In Hebrew it's called gimilut chasadim. You've heard the word before. It means actually acts that cause kindness. Our rabbis teach that kindness is one of the three pillars upon which the entire world stands. Al ha-Torah v'al ha-avodah v'al gimilut chasadim. We even said it to a song. On Torah, on prayer, and on acts that cause kindness. Because without kindness, our rabbis teach, the world would collapse. When kindness is withheld, the world does collapse. When kindness is withheld, it can be soul-crushing. It can be brutal. But when kindness is given and received, the rabbis are right, the world is sustained. Gimilut chasadim is the contagion of goodness. And we know all too well that when a contagion spreads, they are practically unstoppable. Our tradition teaches that kindness is more than just the acts. It's the emotion, the effort, the total human involvement for the other that motivates you to act. That is kindness. Kindness creates a bond between the giver and the receiver. It's not about you, but it most certainly is because of you. That's what kindness does when you give it and receive it. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is somehow a uniquely Jewish trait. It is not. It is a human expression. Perhaps actually the most fundamental and human of all, to help another person in their time of need, to be kind. Anthropologist Margaret Mead reached the same conclusion as our rabbis, who say that kindness is one of the foundations upon which the world stands. She wrote, "The earliest sign of civilization is not a clay pot or tools made of iron or the first domesticated plants. It is a mended femur, a treated broken bone. It shows someone must have cared for the injured person, hunted on their behalf, brought them food, served them at personal sacrifice. The first step to civilization is an act of human compassion, of kindness. It becomes the foundation for all the great achievements of humankind and humanity." Remember this phrase: out of despair comes purpose. The purpose of the individual who is in despair, calling out for help, and our collective purpose in offering the kindness imbued in our response. Kindness changes you. It improves you. Now, sometimes our purpose to get up in the morning is indeed ourselves. But quite often, that's not why we get out of bed. The reason we get out of bed is because of our loving care and concern for others. It's that ancient cave dweller who went out and hunted and gathered a double portion so that their mate could rest and recover from the injury they experienced. Why? Because in that cave and in this world and in this congregation and in your homes, we need each other. Every single one of us will experience a moment when we need help. Nobody can do this alone. You know where I found this the most, aside from Barry Manilow? In my gratitude for what others did for my mother, I wanted to pay it forward somehow. It's a tradition to do tzedakah when you receive a mitzvah like that. And so I started to read GoFundMe posts and give some tzedakah. It's a thing I like to do. I like to give little bits of tzedakah to people in need. If you want your heart broken and then mended, if you are uplifted by stories of true kindness, visit the GoFundMe website or sites like them. You'll find there thousands of desperate pleas for help, but you'll also find 10,000 and more acts of kindness right along with them. GoFundMe campaigns and things like that, they always sprout up after natural disasters and mass shootings, but people also raise money for everyday funeral expenses, for their pets, to pay for a wedding dress for a bride who lost hers in a fire, to renovate a wounded veteran's home so that it is wheelchair accessible. The examples are as limitless as is human suffering. The level of support, the sheer numbers of people that step up to help reveals the fundamental kindness and goodness in humanity. And it reveals something else as well. Our need to redirect our sense of hopelessness and frustration with the state of the world towards a purpose that is greater than our own self-interest. We need to do that. Because maybe we can't solve the big problems that plague our society and our planet, though I know we try. But we can take that problem and solve it at the local level. Jews in Argentina that are struggling to live. Ukrainian Jews that need a place to call shelter. Restaurants in our neighborhood that are suffering through COVID. We can help the ones in our neighborhood. Global warming causing unprecedented flooding in the interior. We can help rebuild at least one ranch in their ruined stables and barns. We think sometimes that we should be able to do it ourselves. We're often consumed with worry that we don't want to bother others with our own troubles, that we can't imagine people would really care anyways. There's a beautiful story in the Talmud about a rabbi who selflessly goes around taking care of, and in some cases even curing, all of these people, all these other people. And then he becomes sick himself, and they ask him, and they wonder when they ask, why can't he cure himself? And the answer is because the prisoner cannot free himself from jail. And when you have bars in front of you, you need someone else to find the key, to open the door, to reach in and bring you out. Everyone has experienced a moment in their lives where somebody reached in and pulled you out and lifted you up, physically, emotionally, spiritually. That act of reaching out, of lifting up, it restored your faith in whatever. It restored your faith in humanity, in your relationship with that person, in your relationship with God. It might have restored your faith in yourself as a person deserving of kindness. That is the power that human kindness has in the life of another. And then when you multiply it, when you multiply that by dozens and dozens of people all doing acts of kindness, it is truly the power to sustain the world, to change the world. And you must also know this, that just as somebody has done that for you in your life, whether you realize it or not, whether they told you this or not, you have done that for somebody in their life. You have reached in and pulled them out and lifted them up. You have been that help that they needed, that support that they could not get by without. You have been a guardian angel, and you appear to them in that moment as heaven sent, because you are heaven sent. Menachem Mendel of Raimanov taught, people are God's language. That is why when we cry out in our anguish, God responds by sending us people. By sending you. Some of those people are in this room. Some of those people that have reached in and pulled you out and lifted you up are sitting right next to you, right now. You can hold their hand, it's okay. Part of the solution for any narrowness, for any depression, for any upset or tragedy, is to make life bigger, because it is always bigger than what we can see. And doing that, like opening up the aperture on a camera lens, when we widen our focus, we are able to see beyond our narrow self, and thereby we enable ourselves not only to be changed, but to actually change. There once lived a man and his young son. The man was a merchant, someone who sold a little of this and a little of that, just to put food on the family table. Usually he sold his merchandise in their village, but once a month he would get out his sturdy wagon and his horse, and he'd load it up with a little of this and a little of that, and he would travel to the other town. Now, where he lived in a valley. So to get to another town, he had to go over the mountain to get anywhere else. It was an adventure. And every month he did this, his son would come along on this adventure. Now, nothing generally exciting happened when they would take these trips. But the boy, for him, they were always a great adventure. That was because the town in which the family lived was nestled in this valley, and if you wanted to go anywhere, you had to go over the mountain. And so they'd load up the wagon with a little of this and a little of that, and they would head out down the road, and they'd travel the roads until they got to the winding road that wound around this mountain, with always a mountain on one side and a cliff on the other. And around they went until they got to the very, very top of the mountain, the part where they would start to go winding back down to the other village to sell their stuff. And as they came to the apex and they came around that curve, the horse stopped. The wagon stopped. And there in front of them was a giant boulder. The horse didn't know what to do, because had this been in the valley, the horse would have just gone off the side of the road and gone around. The father turned to his son and said, "This boulder's blocking the road. We're going to have to turn around and go back." The boy was sad, crestfallen. He looked at his dad and he said, No, wait. And he got off the wagon and he ran up to the boulder and he started to push on it and pull on it and push and pull till his arms bulged with muscles he didn't know he had, and it didn't budge. And he went back to his father in the wagon, wiping his brow, sad-faced, and said, "Dad, I can't move the boulder. I guess we're going to have to go back." And his father said, "Did you try everything that you could?" He thought about it for a while and he said, "Well, I think I did." And then remembered they sold fabric. And so he went to the wagon, because they sell fabric. They went to the wagon and he wrapped it around the boulder, and the boy started to pull and pull and pull on the boulder, and pulled until his eyes bulged out and it wouldn't move. And he went back to his father, crestfallen now, starting to develop tears, and he said to his dad, I can't move the boulder. I tried pulling on it. It won't go anywhere." And his dad said, "Did you try everything that you could?" He thought about it some more, and then he remembered they sell lumber, they sell wood, because they sell lumber and wood too. And so he went to the back of the wagon and he got this big long board and he wedged it under the boulder. And this little boy started to push on it and push on it and push until his arms and his eyes and everything bulged, and it didn't move. He put the board back and he was crying now, and he said to his dad, "Dad, I guess we're going to have to go home." His father said, "Did you try everything that you could?" And now the boy started to get angry. He said, "Yeah, Dad, I did. I pushed on it. I pulled on it. I went and got the fabric. I tied it around it. I pulled on it with that. I went and got the board. You saw me, and I pushed. My arms, everything was bulging. I tried everything I could." And then his father said, "No, you forgot one very important thing. You forgot to ask me to help you." And then together, the father and the son got off the wagon, and they pushed and they pulled and they rolled the boulder out of the way, and they continued on down the valley, down into the valley, to sell their things. If the most powerful human act is an act of kindness, then the companion to that action, equally powerful, is to ask for help. To ask and receive kindness is to have your prayers answered. in the language of God by those of us in this community sitting beside you and around you right now. Tomorrow, Temple Shalom is going to launch a new page on our website. The page is called Give Kindness. There, members of our community can ask for help. Faced with a seemingly unmovable boulder in your path, you can anonymously post a need you have. Ask this room for help. You need a ride to the cemetery, to the doctor, you need help moving, you need a job, you need someone to walk with or talk with or play cards with, set up your internet, whatever it is. You post your needs. The boulder that you don't have the strength or the courage or the resources to overcome on your own, and Temple Shalom members, all of us, creatively and cooperatively can respond directly with kindness, with offers of help and support right through the website. Remember what I said before. Out of despair comes purpose. Out of chesed and compassion and kindness towards others comes hope. It's one of the pillars of our community. It's one of the pillars that sustains the entire world. And so this is a different kind of high holiday appeal. I'm not asking you to give money. I mean, we will, but we did. We will again. I'm asking you to give kindness. It will help someone in need. It will give you your own life's purpose. It will sustain the world. Imagine if your world was shattered and no one cared. I felt that way in the hospital room. Wasn't sure anyone cared. What if you asked for help and no one answered? Some don't need to imagine it. You've experienced it. You might feel it now. Our rabbis teach Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh, that all Jews are responsible for one another. The idea that we are all responsible for each other means that no one should ever have to feel alone, certainly not in this community, not in a community such as ours. Being responsible for each other means that when you are part of a community and you ask for help, the community answers. So ask for help when you need it. Give help, give kindness whenever and however you can. In despair, find purpose. And to paraphrase, remember what Barry sang. If I only knew what you're going through, you know I just can't smile without you. Gamar Chatima Tova.